Welcome to Eat, Pray, Love, Heal, Repeat. I am your host, Leticia Lorian, the social architect, and this is another space for your healing playground. We are here to talk about all of the things that lead to healing, restoration, and all that comes with being well as you learn to take your unique journey towards wholeness. This podcast is an authentic embrace, soothing realness, and conscious space to support the necessary transformation, spiritual awakening, and healing within and around you. So fall back, listen with intention, and open your heart and mind as you come into conversation with me on our continued journey to wellness. Hey y'all, this is Leticia Lorian, the social architect, here to assist you on your journey to wellness as you learn to integrate mind, body, and spirit. Welcome to Eat, Pray, Love, Heal, Repeat, episode 7. We are talking about the ego impact. In the past few episodes, we were introduced and reintroduced to the pain body. And it's important that we do not hang on to any one emotion, right? This is kind of review of those couple of episodes that we had on the pain body, because we know that hanging on to the emotion causes stress to the body. It can lead to imbalance. The ego has a lot to do with us deciding to hold on or to let go to any one emotion or one experience. This is why it's so important to talk about the ego, and which is why I wanted to make space to do that on this episode. So the concept of the ego has a long history in psychology, and the roots, a lot of it is in like ancient philosophy and religion. However, the term ego, as it is used in modern psychology, was really coined by Sigmund Freud. And he was the founder of psychoanalysis, for those of you who are like, who in the world was Sigmund Freud? But in Freud's theory, personality of the ego, he described the ego as the part of our psyche that mediates between impulses of what he called the id, which were these unconscious instinctual parts of our psyche, and the demands of the external world. So it's responsible for the ego is responsible for a person's sense of self, their self-esteem, and their sense of individuality and personal identity. So the ego is also responsible for a person's sense of reality and their ability to make rational decisions and solve problems. So Freud's concept of the ego has had significant influence in the field of psychology, and the term ego is now widely used in modern psychology as well to refer to this aspect of the self. The concept of the ego has also been developed and refined by other psychologists and theorists, and there are many different interpretations and approaches to understanding the role of the ego in our personality and our mental health. So, this is really a concept that refers again to our thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and it's often described as the I or me that is present in a person, in the person's consciousness, and usually represents that sense of self. So that's when you hear a person use the I and me a lot, like I feel or that is for me. When we start to think in that way with our psyche, then that is our ego that is in place. So the ego can both be positive and negative in terms of its impact on our mental health. On the positive side, a healthy ego can help a person feel confident and secure in their sense of self and can provide a sense of stability and direction in life. It can also help a person navigate their relationships with others and make decisions that are in line with their values and goals. However, an unhealthy or overly inflated ego can lead to a number of negative consequences for mental health. For example, an ego that is too large or out of balance can lead to narcissistic or arrogant behaviors, which can alienate others and damage relationships. An unhealthy ego can also lead to a lack of self awareness and an inability to recognize one's own limitations, which can lead to poor decision making and negative consequences. And an unhealthy ego can also contribute to feelings of anxiety, depression, and low self esteem. An inflated ego, right? An inflated ego is characterized by an excessive sense of self importance. Kind of sound like a narcissist, huh? Uh, and an overestimation of one's ability or worth. So, I want to give you a few examples of behaviors that indicate an inflated ego. All right. Okay. Arrogance. Arrogance. That's an inflated ego that may manifest as a sense of superiority or entitlement, leading a person to act arrogantly or dismissively towards others. I know y'all got people coming up in your mind right now that suffer from arrogance. Another is narcissism, an excessive focus on one's own needs and desires with little regard for the needs and feelings of others, which may be a sign of an inflated ego. I'm sure people are popping up that's like that too for y'all. Another, an inability to accept criticism. So this, an inflated ego may also make it difficult for a person to accept criticism or feedback. So because they may feel that their abilities or worth are being questioned. Another is overconfidence. So it can lead to a person overestimating their abilities or take unnecessary risk, leading to poor decision making and negative consequences. And then another is a lack of empathy. So inflated ego may make it difficult for a person to understand or appreciate the perspectives and feelings of others, which leads to a lack of empathy. So it's important to strive for a healthy balance of ego in order to maintain good mental health and positive relationships with others. So in my opinion and in my experience, I don't find that balance is a realistic expectation for human beings. I just have found that it has been difficult through when I was a therapist and when seeing clients, when they would try to create this sense of balance in their life, it seems to cause more disease. I know with even my own personal life, I find it hard to come to a point of balance. And I really don't think as human beings, it's possible to come to a point of true balance. When you think you're even balanced, you're really not balanced. Something is off. So for me, and this is my own personal opinion, right? So in my opinion, I think we need to look for more harmony. We need to find harmony. It is generally not healthy or productive to completely suppress the ego. Okay. So, because the ego does serve an important function in our sense of self and self-esteem and our individuality, which we all need. So our ego still serves us in that way. However, there are many times when it is helpful to recognize when the ego is getting in the way and take steps to manage it in a healthy way. The goal is for a person to have a healthy ego that is able to bring harmony to their own needs and desires with the demands of the world around them. Okay, that is the goal. So I want to talk about some religious and spiritual traditions. The concept of the ego in a lot of religious or spiritual traditions, it may be related to what's called the Holy Spirit. But it is important to note that these concepts come from different cultural and physiological contexts and should not be, combined into one. But in many Western spiritual traditions, the Holy Spirit is understood as one of the three divine persons of Christian Trinity, right? So along with God, you have the Father and the Son, and then we have Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit is often associated again with the idea of this divine presence and guidance, and is believed to be a source of wisdom, inspiration, and empowerment for believers, for Christians. For me, I see the Holy Spirit as an essence, right? For me, it's an essence that I choose to come into my life to help me in managing my ego. For me, without me accepting the Holy Spirit in my life, it's been it just it without. I think I said that wrong. For me, accepting, I think I said without accepting the Holy Spirit in my life is just much easier. Um, it's much easier to get beyond my impulses and some of the demands of the world. So, for those of you interested in understanding more about the Holy Spirit and accepting the Holy Spirit into your life, check out the show notes and don't be afraid to leave questions or make comments using the feedback card on the podcast page of my website. You can find all of that in the show notes. I just cannot let an episode go by where I'm talking about the Holy Spirit and I don't put something there as a tool for you to learn more about it and how you go about accepting it into your life. So back to managing the ego. Managing the ego involves finding a healthy balance between a strong sense of self and a willingness to recognize and accept one's limitations and faults. So here are a few strategies that may be helpful in managing the ego. So one is practicing self-awareness. So you want to pay attention to your thoughts, your feelings, and behaviors, and try to understand the underlying motivations and drivers behind them. This can really help you in gaining insight into your ego and how it may be influencing your actions. Okay, so practicing self awareness is one way that you can manage the ego. Another way is seeking feedback. Ask for feedback from others, including both positive and constructive feedback. This can help you see yourself more objectively and identify areas where your ego may be getting in the way of your growth and development. Also, practicing humility. Try to cultivate a sense of humility, which means being open to learning from other people and recognizing that you do not have all the answers. This can help you keep your ego in check and avoid becoming overly self-centered or arrogant. Okay? Because that's where we get back to the narcissist and that whole addiction to arrogance. Okay? Another is seeking balance or seeking harmony. Okay? It is important to have a healthy sense of self-worth and self-esteem, but it is also important to be able to recognize and accept your limitations and faults. Striving for harmony in these areas can help you manage your ego in a healthy way. Okay? So, seeking harmony is another way. And you got to seek harmony for yourself, y'all, whatever that looks like for you. It can look different for different people. Seeking harmony for me it looks different depending on the season of my life that I'm in. I know right now, seeking harmony for me is I have a lot going on in terms of some uncertainty in different areas of my life. So, for harmony to go along with that so that I can get through these uncertainties in the most healthiest way, I need to bring in other things. Like I do need to bring in more time with my hobbies. That helps bring about some harmony. Also, spending time with a few friends, right? And it needs to be friends where I can laugh with because I'm in a deep period in my life right now. A lot of introspection, a lot of deepness. So I need to hang around that pocket of friends that I got that don't mind laughing, telling some jokes. Let's get some sarcasm in there. So all of us should have little circles of friends for different reasons and different purposes in our lives because we go through different seasons. So I know right now I need those joking friends, those laughing friends, those friends that don't mind acting a little crazy, right? In a healthy way. Because that is going to bring about some harmony, right? For me. So those are some examples of what I'm talking about. I know I recently, in the beginning of the year, I wanted to kind of do a little detox with my body. So I've been not consuming a lot of sugar and I've also been drinking a lot more water, including some other things into my diet so that I can, because I just went crazy like a lot of us did over the holidays. I started doing that to bring about some more harmony in what was already going on with the heaviness. So, those are some examples of how you bring about harmony depending on the season that you're in your life. Depending on some seasons, you might feel real free. So you kind of need those friends that are more grounded, right? Deeper conversations and things like that. So depending on where you're at, you got to assess where you're at. So seeking out harmony. Lastly, in terms of a strategy to manage the ego, engage in activities that challenge the ego. So, such as trying new things, learning from others, taking on new roles or responsibilities, all these things can help you grow as a person and keep your ego in check. So, um, all these things are important. Checking the ego is always important because when it becomes inflated, um, or deflated to the point where you start to have low self-esteem, there's this nice dance with the ego that you got to find, and it's kind of a sweet spot that you got to go on your own journey and find. But I did give you some tips to managing it. I also gave you some ways to know that it's inflated. Um, and we talked about the role of spiritual practice in this, and what role that plays, because I talked about, for me, it was the Holy Spirit that kind of helps me manage the ego and the steps that I should be taking and some of the decisions that I make from time to time and how I speak, even in my language. I'm led to speak in a certain way. And I do more responding than reacting to situations because of how I'm able to manage the ego through the Holy Spirit that dwells within me. And that is due to my own spiritual practices. And so I continue to encourage everyone, if you don't already have a spiritual practice, find out, well, what direction you're going to go in and lean into that, because a relationship with God is a must. It is a must out in this world that we live in. I'm just letting you know. Without it, you will feel the heat of life, because it's a lot of twists and turns. It's a lot of surprises, and those things are hard to cope with if we don't have something grounded to go back to, something that's unchangeable, right? Something that's always there. And it can't be a person, because people, we change. We're emotional beings, human beings are, and we change and move. And we really need to gravitate ourselves to something that's unchangeable, that's always grounded and always rooted, and that is God. All right, so y'all, managing the ego is an ongoing process. It requires self-awareness. It requires a willingness to continually learn and grow. And by following those strategies that we went over in this episode, you can work towards a healthy balance of ego that supports your overall well-being. This means having a sense of self-worth, self-esteem, but also being able to recognize and accept your own limitations and faults, and being open to learning and growing as a person. So remember, all of this is important when working with the ego, and I'm gonna constantly be bringing up the ego in this show, in this podcast, because it is something that is so relevant. And if somebody doesn't help us, give us a nudge sometime and say, oh, watch it, oh, remember you have an ego, because at any given time when we don't pay attention, we can boast. It can become inflated because of the things that are going on in life, the successes, the achievements, and it can also become very deflated. So depending on how life is going. So sometimes we need to catch ourselves and make sure that we're managing it appropriately so that we're not doing any damage or harm, not only to others, but also to ourselves, right? All right, y'all. So we coming to the conclusion. So let's go to our inspirational quote. All right. Random inspirational quote. Here we go. Sometimes it's not the people who change, it's the mask that falls off. That is a perfect quote for this episode on the ego. Huh. Sometimes it's not the people who change, it's the mask that falls off. Like, subscribe, and share. And most importantly, let's keep building. All right, y'all. This healing playground is closed for now, but continue working on the design of your own. And remember, outside of laughter, you need to eat, pray, love, heal, and repeat it all over again.